Hey everyone, and welcome to another Geek Talk video. Sorry about the lighting and whatnot, it's like dark outside. Well, it's daytime, but the weather is terrible. But anyway, I'm going to try and make this one extremely short because there are not many points that I need to make. I want to address something that I feel extremely strongly about. Now, I get a lot of questions about switching from Windows to Mac, switching from a PC to a Mac computer. So, what I want to say, and this is the basics of it all, what I want to say is, it is not difficult. No matter how you use your computer, no matter if you use it for highly professional stuff, you know, video editing, photoshopping, whatever, or you just use it to browse the internet and check your emails, neither thing is difficult. Everything is absolutely fine, and once you learn it, it's never going to leave your head. If you're using a Mac, once you get to grips with that one thing you may have been struggling with, then you're not going to have to relearn it. So it's a very, very smooth process. And what lots of people do, and what I did, was run the Mac alongside the Windows machine for a little bit, just to get used to it. If I wasn't quite sure on the Mac, I'd go to the Windows machine and do that particular thing. So I switched to Mac back in 2007, and my first Mac was a white MacBook, the 2.16 GHz version with Tiger. But I switched from Windows Vista, having used Windows XP as well, I switched from Vista to Tiger, and that was such an easy process. And in my opinion, with Snow Leopard and Windows 7, it's an even easier process today. Snow Leopard is just fantastic, and hopefully Lion will be just as good and probably even better. But that's a whole nother video. But anyway, let me just talk about a few things. Let me just quickly address hardware. There is a complete myth out there, and I hate it. I hear it a lot from PC fanboys. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a PC hater. I own a few PCs, and there's a lot of PC videos to come. But I hear a lot from PC fanboys, things like, you have to get a Mac-compatible external hard drive. I'm really sorry, but that is complete and utter crap, basically. That is total nonsense. A hard disk is a hard disk, and it's a USB device, or a FireWire device or whatever. But to cut a long story short, you can erase your hard disk no matter what it is in any format that you like. So you can go onto your Mac, and if you plug in your hard disk and it says it's not compatible with a computer, you can initialize it then and there within an application called Disk Utility in OS X. It is so easy to format it for Mac OS X, and you can also format it for MS-DOS, which is just a FAT file system, I believe, in order to use it with a Mac and a PC, use it between both, read and write on both. So that's a complete myth. You don't have to get Mac-specific USB devices at all. Things like cameras and whatnot, no, whatever. There's drivers for everything. Things are just going to work with OS X. And if they don't work, then you must have got the rarest and most useless device out there, because OS X, for the 3.5 years that I've been using your OS X now, I've never run into a problem. Card readers, USB optical drives, USB hard drives, USB pen drives, cameras, video cameras, anything like that, it all just works, which is fantastic. And that's what you expect from such a solid operating system. Let's talk about the OS now. We've talked a little bit about that hardware, let's talk about the OS. Before I talk about the OS, actually, if you do happen to buy a Mac Pro for your first Mac, which I don't think you will, please be aware that you can't stick any old graphics card in there. I've got a PCI Express 2.0 XFX Radeon HD 5770 graphics card here, brand new. Even though this will fit into the Mac Pro, it will not work. Cards have to be flashed in order to run on the Mac Pro, and it's highly recommended that you get them from Apple directly. But there are people on eBay that do sell cards that they have flashed themselves. So they buy something like this, which is about £90, and then sell it for about £140, £150, which is still about £50 cheaper than Apple sell it. But you often find a very common thing with the 5770 and other cards, the 5870 and stuff like that. When people flash them, you can't seem to see the boot screen if you're using a DVI monitor, which is absurd. So, I'm not the biggest fan of flashing cards. By the way, I'll explain about that 5770 in another video, in a few future videos. You'll see why I've got that. But yeah, if, you know, that doesn't really apply to people watching this video because you're most likely going to get a Mac Mini or an iMac or a MacBook or something along those lines. Some consumer Mac. Okay, let's talk about the main part of this video, and that's the operating system. Going from Windows, whether it is XP or Windows 7, of course it won't be Vista, nobody uses that. If you use that, I feel sorry. My parents actually use Vista, but not for much longer. Switching from Windows to OS X, now you're obviously going to be switching to Snow Leopard, unless you're buying a PowerPC Mac for your first Mac, which I don't recommend. If you want to see my opinions on PowerPC, then I've got another Geek Talk episode where I talk in depth about that. But anyway, I'm going to give you my quick general overview of switching from Windows to OS X. And this isn't a tutorial or anything by any means. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what to do, but I'm just going to express to you how easy I think it is. Now, I believe a computer is a computer. You've got icons, menus, you've got a cursor on the screen as part of the GUI. You've got a keyboard and a mouse, and the interaction between yourself and the operating system is the same, whether you're using Mac, any distro of Linux with a GUI, or Windows, of course. Windows, how could I forget that? But I think that you're communicating with the system in the same way because you're telling the computer to run a process that you want it to run. The only thing that's going to be different is where these things are located and the wording that's used. Let me give you an example. To access your shutdown command in Windows, you press the Windows button at the bottom left of the screen. On the Mac, it's exactly the same thing. You press a menu in order to shut down your Mac, but you press it at the top left, the Apple logo at the top left. Things are just moved around. And there are differences between how the operating system behaves, of course, but that's things that you'll get to grips with automatically and learn. Things just in different places. And names of things are different. So instead of properties or settings, you've got preferences. Instead of gadgets, you've got widgets. It's just everything like that. Things are just differently worded. And if you use a little bit of common sense, then you pretty much know what it's all about. You can look at that word and think, okay, preferences. I think that's where I'm going to change all of my preferences and settings of this particular application, because it's just common sense. If you know what the word preferences means and you want to change the settings in your application, I don't see a problem with clicking on the word preferences. Now, the only time you're going to get problems is if people use a Mac with a closed mind. If they go towards a Mac and think, okay, it's a completely different operating system, I've never used a Mac before, I don't have a clue what I'm doing, no, I don't want to touch it, you know, stuff like that. Because there are so many people out there like that. Or you don't even have to be that extreme, it's just like you're using the Mac and then saying, oh, I can't find this, oh, there's no start menu, oh, where's Internet Explorer, blah, blah, blah. You just got to have an open mind. That's all you need. And to find things like the web browser, I mean, you know, whether you're a Mac user or not, you know that Safari is a web browser, you've known that because you're on Windows. You know, if you've got an iPod, which pretty much everyone has, you've been prompted to download Safari and stuff like that. You know that it's called Safari. And if you don't know, you can just click on every application in the dock until you find your web browser. It's not going to take you long because you can eliminate things like address book, iTunes. You can eliminate things like that because you know that they're not going to be a web browser. So what I'm saying is, as long as you use your sense, take your time, read what's on the screen, it's all going to be fine. And of course, it's a fun process. You're learning something new. It's not like going to school and learning all this boring crap in science or in maths. You're learning something that you've dumped a lot of money into that you obviously want to learn for some reason or another. It's very cool. I highly recommend using a Mac over, you know, say your mate's house or in a shop or something, just to see that you like it. Yes, it's something that can grow on you over time, but if you're dismissed at the first step, if you're like, oh, I hate the way it looks, you can't really do much about that in OS X, and you can't really do that much about the Mac hardware itself. So if you're one of these random people that dislikes Macs for some reason, then I highly recommend, before you want to purchase one or whatever, for whatever crazy reason, if you don't like them, just use one. You understand what I'm saying. You know, a Mac is a lot of money, and if you purchase it and realise that you can't get to grips with the operating system, it's kind of a waste of money. So, having said that, I reckon that's going to be true for an extreme minority of people. I reckon you, out there, the person that's switching from Windows to OS X, can very easily do it without any hassle at all. Now then, let me address a couple of things that can confuse people. Installing applications. It's actually easier on OS X to install applications, however, people get confused because applications 90% of the time come as a disk image. On Windows, you get an installer where you double click and it takes you through a process, next, blah, blah, blah. You get that on Mac sometimes with more high-end programs, say if you're installing something like Final Cut, or even some low-end programs as well. But most of the time, you get a disk image where you click on your disk image and you get an application. Now, lots of people, when they're first using their Mac, get that application from the disk image, drag it down into their dock, and eject the disk, and that's the end of it. That means every time you click on that application, it's going to be accessing the disk image and remounting it in order to open the application. Now, it's better than it was these days. People tend to give more instructions. Application developers tend to say, drag to applications folder. However, back when I switched, it did take a little while for me to get used to it, if I'm honest with you. It was a strange process going from Windows, where you just pressed run whatever, to actually physically dragging your own application out of the disk image to your applications folder or wherever you want to store it. But this becomes second nature as soon as you start doing it. Another thing is, as well, is the way programs behave. Now, as far as programs being open and closed, in OS X it works in a different way. In Windows, when you press that red cross, it closes the entire program. Things from the program still run in the background, annoyingly, but it closes that program and you can't access it again without reopening it. In macOS X, if you press that red cross, the program is still active. All that red cross closes is the particular window that you're working on, which actually makes far more sense when you think about it. However, people think it doesn't make sense just because it's different to Windows. But say I've got multiple Safari windows open and I press that red cross, it's only going to close that window. If I close every single window, Safari is still going to be open, it's still going to be an active application, and you can select it from your applications. It's still going to be in the dock with that little thing underneath it, and you can still access all the menu bar items and everything. So that's just something to keep in mind. I see lots of new Mac users and their list of open applications is crazy because they think they're closing the apps by pressing the red cross. But anyway, that's just a few things that I've delved into. I don't think I should have delved into things in so much detail in this video. I just wanted to give you an overview and say that my opinion from switching to Windows, from Windows to OS X is a very easy process. And my recommendation is, do not sell your PC in order to get money for your Mac. Keep your PC and your Mac at the same time running alongside so you can get used to things. Get used to what behaves differently on the Mac, and if you struggle with a few things, you can still use the PC for the things you struggle with until you learn them on OS X. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to comment me below. Of course, this is aimed at new Mac users. I've got a ton of Mac subscribers, and this video is going to be a total waste of time for you guys to watch. But maybe you've watched it anyway because, I don't know, maybe you were just bored. But anyway, this is devoted to all of you Windows users out there that are considering getting a Mac. It's a very easy process. And if you do struggle with it, there's plenty of people, there's me, and there's loads of other people like me on the internet that are willing to help. And of course, Apple themselves are very good on their website at giving tutorial videos. There is a video, something along the lines of switching from Windows to Mac or PC to Mac or something like that, on their Apple website. It's very good. It explains some of the differences, it explains about the dock, the menu bar, stuff like that. And it's just really good. So if anyone would like any extended tutorials, I'm happy to do a screencast of any major differences between Windows and Mac. That would be maybe beneficial. But anyway, this is my latest Geek Talk video. I hope you found it okay, and please feel free to join me in the next video. Thanks very much for watching.